The Langford room at the River Point Hotel hummed with soft conversation until my mother's voice sliced through it. Vivian leaned toward my professor, smiling politely, then said just loud enough for the whole table to hear, "Some days, I truly wish Mara had never existed." The air collapsed, chairs stiffened, a fork clattered somewhere near the end of the table. My colleagues froze mid-sip, their faces tightening in the kind of silence people use when they are afraid to look directly at a wound. My father, Greg, did not flinch. He dabbed the corner of his mouth with a linen napkin, as if my mother had commented on the weather. "Vivian," he murmured, "keep your voice down." But there was no real reprimand in it, only habit. My chest burned. I waited for anyone to say the words were too much. My professor blinked. Uncomfortable. My manager shifted, clearing his throat but offering no protection. Vivian continued calmly. "I mean, look at Lena. She is in the emergency rotation already. That is real impact." The sweetness in her tone made the cruelty land harder. Jordan, seated diagonally from me, met my eyes. His jaw tightened. He whispered, "You do not have to stay for this." But I stayed 1 second longer, just long enough for Vivian to turn toward me with that familiar, satisfied tilt of her chin. Power settled back into her posture like she had won something. I pushed my chair back. The scrape of wood against the floor startled everyone more than her sentence had. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. No one followed as I walked out. And if you have ever lived unseen in your own family, you will understand why this moment mattered. Stories like mine remind people that breaking away is not dramatic, it is necessary. If you feel that truth in your bones, stay with me. There is more ahead. I grew up in a quiet neighborhood in Syracuse, the kind where everyone waved at each other and assumed every family behind every door was whole. Inside ours, there was a different gravity. "Lena needs to rest," my mother would say whenever I spoke too loudly. "She has real responsibilities." I was 12 the first time I realized what that meant. I had brought home a certificate for winning a regional math competition. I held it out like an offering. Vivian barely glanced up from folding towels. "That's nice." Then she brightened. "Lena starts her volunteer shift in the trauma unit today." "That is meaningful work." My father nodded without looking away from the television. "Your sister has purpose." "Mara, do not distract her." Lena drifted into the room moments later. Ponytail perfect, eyes shining. "Mom, they said I might get to shadow a resident." Vivian clasped her hands like she had been handed gold. "See, this is the kind of thing that matters." I slipped my certificate into a drawer that night, the paper bending at the corner. No one asked where it went. Years later, when I earned admission to Stanford, my advisor cried harder than my mother did. Vivian simply said, "Lena's rotations start soon. We cannot take our attention off her." Even then, I thought I could balance their scale if I worked hard enough. I did not understand that the scale had never been built for me. When I moved to Portland after Stanford, I told myself distance would help. New city, new job, new air to breathe. My manager at the firm, a calm man named Elliot, shook my hand on my first day and said, "You'll do well here. Mara, just do not hide." I laughed as if hiding had ever been a choice. 3 months later, when the graduation celebrations began, I reserved the Langford room at the River Point Hotel. The price made my stomach twist, but I covered it anyway. "It is one night," I told Jordan when he raised an eyebrow. "Maybe they will finally see me." He answered softly, "Maybe, but be ready if they don't." My parents walked in 10 minutes late. Vivian's heels clicked with practiced importance. Greg scanned the room like he expected someone to thank him for coming. "Congratulations," Vivian said, kissing the air beside my cheek. "Where is your sister's seat?" "She is not here," I replied. "She is on call." Vivian sighed dramatically. Real work never stops. During introductions, My professor smiled warmly. You should be incredibly proud of Mara. She carried an entire analytics team last quarter. Vivian responded instantly. Lena had her emergency rotation extended. They said she is a natural. Greg chuckled. Now that is something. Their words landed like small, sharp taps, each one reminding me of my place. My colleagues shifted uncomfortably, but none interrupted. When Elliot raised his glass and said, Mara is one of the most capable consultants I have ever mentored, I looked to my parents again, hoping for anything. Vivian only murmured, Consulting is fine, but it is not life-saving. Jordan leaned closer and whispered, You do not need to set yourself on fire to warm them. The truth of it settled into my chest, heavy and familiar. The bridge I tried to build was already burning. Elliot stood to give a short toast, lifting his glass with an easy smile. Mara has carried more weight than most people twice her age. Her work changed the entire direction of our project this spring. A soft wave of applause moved around the table. I felt it settle over me like warmth brief, unfamiliar, almost frightening. I looked toward my parents, hoping to catch even a flicker of pride. Greg leaned back, unimpressed. Well, compared to what Lena handles in the emergency department, that seems minor. My throat tightened. Elliot's smile faltered, just a little. Vivian dabbed at her lipstick. We are proud of both our daughters, she said lightly, but Lena's work has real impact. Lives are on the line. That is what matters. The waiter stepped forward to refill glasses, but his hand shook. He had heard it too. Jordan's jaw flexed. Vivian, he said quietly, this is Mara's night. She turned her attention to him with a sweet, icy calm. Mara understands. Lena's path is demanding. It requires sacrifice from all of us. All of us, Jordan echoed. Vivian looked back at me, her expression softening into something almost pitying. You cannot expect the world to applaud consulting reports. A few people shifted in their seats. Heat flushed the back of my neck. And honestly, she added, lowering her voice, but not enough. Some days I think all this drama would not exist if Mara were not so sensitive. Some days, I wish she were never here at all. The room stopped, chairs stiffened, silverware froze. Even the waiter stepped back as if he had intruded on something dangerous. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. I stood. The legs of my chair dragged hard against the floor, the sound cracking through the silence sharper than her words. I am done, I said. Not loudly, just with finality. No one followed as I walked toward the door. Behind me, conversation tried to restart, weak and broken. Jordan rose halfway from his chair, eyes following me, but I kept walking. The script my family had written for me no longer held. Portland rain hit my shoulders the moment I stepped outside, thin and cold. I kept walking until the hotel lights disappeared behind me. My phone buzzed again and again, lighting up with the same message from my mother. You embarrassed us. Fix this. Not a single word about what she had said. When I finally reached my apartment, the silence felt heavier than the rain. I set my phone on the counter, opened my banking app, and stared at the scheduled transfers waiting in the queue. The monthly mortgage interest, $780. The utility payment, $160. The upcoming tuition portion for Lena's program, $14,500. My thumb hovered. I heard my mother's voice from the dinner, low and precise. Some days, I wish she were never here at all. I pressed cancel on the first transfer, then the second, then the third. Each confirmation clicked with a small vibration, soft but final, like locks turning on doors I did not know I was allowed to close. A text appeared from Jordan moments later. I am outside. Just checking that you are still standing. I exhaled. The first steady breath of the night. Jordan stepped inside without waiting for permission, holding 2 steaming containers of noodles and a bottle of wine he pretended not to care about. He set everything on the floor beside me. "You look like someone who forgot how to breathe," he said softly. "I am breathing," I replied, though my voice wavered. He sat beside me, knees brushing mine. "Your mother crossed a line tonight." I shook my head. It was not one line. It was every line she has ever drawn. Tonight was just the first time everyone heard her say the quiet part. Jordan studied me for a long moment. "So what? Now I canceled everything," I said. "The $780 for the mortgage interest, the $160 for utilities, the $14,500 for Lena's tuition." My throat tightened. "I have been carrying all of it. And for what? For nothing," he answered, calm and certain. "You deserved more than they ever offered." 3 weeks unfolded quietly after that night. No apology from Vivian, no explanation from Greg. Just a hollow silence that once would have crushed me. Now it felt clean, at work, projects piled high. Elliot slid a new file across my desk one morning. "You take point on this. You have earned it." His confidence in me felt like a door opening, one I had never been allowed to step through at home. Then came the magazine feature. A local reporter wrote about the unseen labor women Carrie, using my story as an example. I had not realized she would publish it until my inbox filled with messages from strangers. "I know what it is to be invisible in your own family. Thank you for saying what some of us cannot." One evening, as I reread those messages, Jordan glanced over my shoulder. "People see you," he murmured. His voice was warm, quiet, certain. For the first time, the quiet inside me did not echo with loss. It sounded like space I finally owned. Late on a Tuesday evening, I slipped my key into the apartment door after a 12-hour day. My shoulders ached. My blazer hung crooked from where I had yanked it off in the car. Through the frosted glass, I caught the silhouettes of 2 figures standing unnaturally still. A knock followed. Hard. Familiar. Jordan had warned me once that silence from my parents only meant they were gathering their next demand. "Mara," my mother's voice called. "Open the door. We know you are there." I inhaled slowly, then unlocked it. Vivian swept inside immediately. Greg close behind her as if the space still belonged to them. Vivian scanned my living room with disapproval. "We need to talk. About what I asked." "Lena," Greg answered, sinking into my couch without invitation. "Her program placed her on 30-day probation. They will suspend her if the tuition balance is not cleared." Vivian clasped her hands. "She has worked too hard for this. We cannot let her fall behind." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You came all the way here to tell me that you need to help," Vivian said, as if announcing the weather. "You have always helped. That is the role you play in this family." Something inside me stilled. I paid $14,500 last semester. I covered the mortgage interest, the utilities, years of it. And you stood in a room full of people and said you wished I had never existed. Vivian bristled. "You are overreacting," Greg added. "We were angry. You embarrassed us. Do not make this petty." I stepped closer. "I am not being petty. I am being done." Vivian's voice sharpened. "Family is family. You owe us." I met her gaze without looking away. "No, I owe nothing." I walked to the door and pulled it open, letting the hallway light spill across the room. It landed on my parents, washing their faces in a brightness they could not hide behind. Vivian stiffened. "Why are you opening the door?" "So you can leave," I said. Greg stood slowly. "Mara, do not make this harder than it needs to be." "It has always been hard," I replied. "You just never noticed." Vivian stepped forward, her voice thin and sharp. "Lena is drowning. She needs support. You are choosing the worst moment to be selfish." "Selfish," I repeated, letting the word settle. I have paid your mortgage interest for years. I covered utilities. I wired $14,500 last semester without hesitation. I did all of that while you reminded me again and again that I was less. Vivian's mouth tightened. We were upset. You provoked us. No, I said. You hurt me because that is the language you know. Greg rubbed his forehead. Mara, come on. We raised you. The truth rose easily this time. You did not raise me. You drained me. For the first time, they both went still. I stepped aside, motioning toward the open doorway. If you came here to apologize, I would listen. Not forgive, just listen. But you came to demand more. And that conversation is over. Vivian's eyes flashed, but nothing came out. Greg looked at the floor, his shoulders slumping under a weight he could not name. Mara, he murmured. You will regret this. No, I said gently. I am finally choosing myself. That is the part you never taught me. Vivian drew a sharp breath, then turned away. Greg followed, slower, almost unsteady. They crossed the threshold. I closed the door behind them, and the latch clicked like the quietest kind of freedom. 6 months later, I stood on a small stage in downtown Portland, speaking at a leadership conference. My talk was called Hidden Labor, the Cost of Being the Strong One. The room was full. Jordan sat near the back, nodding when our eyes met. Afterward, people lined up to thank me. One woman squeezed my hand and said, You told my story better than I ever could. Her voice trembled. I felt something inside me settle steady, grounded. When the crowd thinned, an envelope appeared on the table beside the podium. No name, just my own written in my mother's careful script. Inside, a single sentence waited. I am trying, Mom. Not an apology, not a rewrite of the past, just a beginning. Neither of us had language for before. Jordan stepped closer. You all right? Yes, I said, and it was finally true. That evening, I walked along the Willamette River, the lights moving across the water like a slow heartbeat. I thought of the girl who spent years trying to earn a place in her own family. She had survived long enough for me to become this version of myself. If any part of my story feels like yours, stay. There is space here for people who had to climb out on their own.